What is going on, Whisper Nation? And welcome in to episode 265 of TFW Live. Yes, I planned that rhyme out, so, kudos to me, and I appreciate you guys hearing me out on that. But this is the Fantasy Whispers. I am Big Travy. That is Austin Cyr. That is Johnny Game Time Hicks. And we are here again, like I said, for 265. We're talking rookie wide receivers today. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe on your way in. Help us grow the brand on whatever platform you are listening or watching or consuming the content here with us. Like I said, we're going to talk rookie wide receivers. But gents, to get us going today, I want to start with some word association. Ooh. So I'm going to say the word, and then you guys are going to tell me what comes to mind. It could be sports related. It could be life related. It could be anything. It's a wild card. So I hope your hearts are fluttering. I hope the palpitations are coming in healthily. So in the news today, Elon Musk made an offer to buy out Twitter. It was a like $43 billion, I believe, was his offer. He's looking to buy Twitter. So when I say the word buyout, what comes to mind, Austin?
Dr. Evil.
$1 billion.
I think I got thrown there, man. Buyout, irrelevancy. Oh. That's what comes to mind. I was thinking of Elon Musk so much. He said that. Buyout, irrelevancy, vacation, greener pastures.
Johnny?
Wow. I wouldn't have gone with any of that direction. I think what we're all thinking. Mysteriously, boys, there was 2 whale wallets of Bitcoin that recently awoke and moved. I think
word association, Johnny.
A word. You got to give a word, not a spiel here.
Hey. I think it's cash money.
All right.
Cash
that'll
money.
Work. That'll work, I guess. We're still figuring out the word association. We'll get it going here. But some big news maybe on the way.
Does it have to rhyme? Did you say
no? It doesn't have to rhyme, but just like what comes to your mind? What word? Not
one. Okay, I thought you said
or
what
comes.
You said what comes to your mind, and so I told you, and then you said it has to be one word.
Oh, I love live. I love live shows, live
love,
entertainment.
Laugh, live, man.
Live, laugh, love, and we love everybody in the chat right now, and everybody that's a part of Whisper Nation. Do it 420, saying what's up. Hey, how's it going, brother? And everybody that joins in, make sure you're talking to us about those rookie wide receivers. We're going to be going through our top 5, or basically the consensus top 5 within the industry. There is a big 5, and we'll jump into some of that. But there was some news and notes. We've got some stuff going on in the industry right now, and so let's jump into some of that. The Packers, our Packers, Austin, are giving former Ravens, former Bills, former Chiefs wide receiver Sammy Watkins a 1-year deal worth up to $4 million per a source. This was per Adam Schefter. So, Austin, I'll ask you, are we buying into Sammy Watkins' fantasy football prospects for 2022, the entire season?
The entire season, it's difficult to, right? We know how many full seasons he's completed, and if you're actually scratching him, I don't know how many. You're with the rest of the world. Nobody knows how many full seasons Sammy Watkins has finished. It's just we just don't know. It's one of those things that like people don't know why a duck's quack doesn't echo. We don't know what Sammy Watkins is about these days. So, okay, am I buying it? I have to, because they are picking him up, and he is going to be a top wide receiver for the Packers because Allen Lazard is the next best wide receiver they have for the Packers. And speaking of the Packers, we got our very own Alex Strofe in the house.
What's up, Strofe?
Let's go.
What's going on, man?
I wonder if you drop us a line about how you're feeling about the Sammy Watkins deal here, Strofe. Let us know.
Yeah, we don't care, but let us know.
I'm
just kidding. We love you, Alex. We love you.
I'm excited for the first couple of weeks of Sammy Watkins to hopefully have him come and drop another 50 burger from a dynasty team.
Yeah, that's right. I can't believe you still rocking him over there, and that's got to pay off. I mean, there is still upside within this signing. I don't know if it'll come to fruition, right? We don't believe that'll come to fruition, but and the Packers are likely to add wide receivers in the draft. But right now, as it stands, Sammy Watkins should be in line for a good amount of targets, regardless of what happens there.
Hey, well, here's the thing.
Strofe, it's better than nothing, right? Similarly, adding Johnny to the show doesn't move the
Wow.
needle, but it adds to the overall product. Well done,
Wow.
Stroh. Well done.
Touche. All
Any
right.
any words to defend yourself there, Johnny?
Prison rules, huh? All right, I get it. No, what I do have to say here is that you guys have been searching and welcome the new MVS, baby. That's exactly what this is, the new MVS, because he'll give you a couple of games, you're right, where he just will get like 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game and you'll be chasing the points. So that's what you're going to get from Sammy.
Does he lead the league? Does he lead the team in snap percentage if he stays healthy?
No.
I mean, you definitely. I think it's possible. I think Lazard's probably going to lead that wide receiving core. But Sammy Watkins is, it's going to be health. That'll be the biggest question if he's on the field, and then obviously what they're able to do via trade or draft.
Does he make the team realistically? Does he make this team? Yeah, I think you guys
so.
draft 2 wide receivers.
Yeah,
I don't think he makes the team.
I think they're not just throwing away $4 million in a very tight cap right
Is
now.
it how much is it all guaranteed?
I don't believe so. It says it's worth up to $4 million, so probably not.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. The Arizona Cardinals, Johnny. Speaking of ho-hum signings, will bring back AJ Green here on a 1-year deal. I want everybody to just maybe take a moment of silence here because here lies Rondale Moore's season. His off season is over now. Basically, the hype is over. It's not going to happen, right? I mean, AJ Green coming back means no Rondale Moore this year, right, Johnny?
No, that's not what it means yet. I say yet because we have been linked to wide receivers in the draft. This either means we aren't going wide receiver in the draft or we are going to do, which, you know what, let's be honest. We're honest with Whisper Nation.
You would.
This just indicates to me that what we've been joking and cracking up about over the last couple of weeks is exactly what's going to happen. Let's find where's Pro Football Focus's number 1 like hidden gem wide receiver, and that's exactly who we're going to go after in like the 3rd round or something. We're going to skip up all this talent instead of just going after the talent in the first place, and we're going to try to get cute and get the number 1 PFF guy. We're going to be excited because we're like, oh, look at this guy, super talented, number 1 PFF, and he's not going to do anything. So that's the frustrating part. AJ Green, the only thing I could think of that would be a positive, and in this case, I would be like, okay, but kudos to you, Cardinals, for doing this, is if they believe that by getting and signing AJ Green, because Julio hasn't signed with anybody, Julio, Hopkins, and AJ Green really want to play together. So in that scenario, yes. If we go out and sign Julio, it's bye-bye Rondale this year. I don't know how he would be more involved than he was last year with those 3 guys. But if that doesn't happen and we do the PFF ranked wide receiver, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be bummed up. I'm not going to lie. As a Cardinals fan, because what's the upside of AJ Green? We saw it. He gives up on plays.
Yeah, gave my Packers a win. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, and in the playoffs he was giving up. Everyone wants to talk about Kyler. Oh, sitting out the last minute. Let's give him crap and talk about him all the time. Let's be realistic. AJ Green gave up on a ton of plays and gave up games.
Even though he did give up on plays and he lost matches for the Cardinals, I mean, he was involved very heavily still. I mean, 9 targets in week 18, 6 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets before that. He was on the field 80% plus of the games. Right. And I think that's what we're probably going to still keep seeing. Going back to the Sammy Watkins point, I think you see probably a little bit of AJ Green with the Cardinals out of Sammy Watkins with the Packers. I think he'll probably be on the field a lot. He'll have some games. He'll more or less be just not. I don't want to call him a non-deterrent to a residual piece.
Yeah, I'm with you. It feels like a deterrent though from what we really had hoped for with Rondale Moore, because there is this, vacated targets from Christian Kirk leaving this offense. He goes and gets a big payday at Jacksonville, and we're, a lot of Twitter, a lot of the fantasy football community is like, hey, Rondale Moore season, let's go. And now we're seeing a situation with a guy, as Austin laid out here, 80% of the snaps is seeing a lot of Kyler's attention.
I mean, Christian Kirk had a lot of snaps as well.
Right.
Yeah,
But
wouldn't Rondale Moore just still take the Christian Kirk role and AJ
Yeah.
Green keeps
Yeah,
the AJ
that's-
Green role?
well, that's
Right.
that's what I'm asking if that's going to go more to AJ Green or if we're going to look at like Zach Ertz is also another candidate because he wasn't there the whole season. So some things to be monitoring there in the Arizona Cardinals target tree there. All right, moving on to another wide receiver. The Houston Texans agreed to a 2-year extension with Brandon Cooks. Austin, in 16 games last year, Cooks was the wide receiver 20. He had 90 receptions on 134 targets, over 1,000 yards. Currently in ADP, Cooks is going as the wide receiver 23. So that's the end of the 5th round in a lot of redrafts this year. Do we think that ADP is fair for Cooks? Is he a nice value in drafts, or do you think that was maybe his ceiling?
I don't think I think ceiling is not an unfair word to consider, but I think it's also kind of close to his median. I think Cooks does what he does regardless of quarterback, regardless of team. Hell, he did it with the Houston Texans last year.
Yeah.
And whoever the hell they had throwing the ball, he was still a wide receiver too, right? You just told me wide receiver 20.
Yep.
That's where he said it wrapped. He even missed a little bit of time. Cooks has intangibles. Cooks has certain skills. He's shown an ability to continue to produce. Until he is buried on the depth chart, which honestly and unfortunately, I think a lot of coaches want to do because Cooks isn't that flashy or exciting of a player, but he keeps getting it done, which maintains his role on the depth chart and gets him a re-signing deal. So I think that until, either like Nico Collins jumps far out and ahead, or they just surround him with a lot more talent that buries Brandon Cooks, I think you can expect what you've seen Brandon Cooks produce the majority of his career. And that's going to be like 1,000 yards and a handful of touchdowns, and he'll be a very good flex piece for you, a nice piece of depth in your wide receiver situation.
Yeah, it just seems like in that area that wide receivers are going, like you'd maybe want him to fall a little bit more because he'd be one of that consistent. You could go get guys that had a bigger ceiling, or imagine could hit a bigger mark. But I do think you're right. I think he's just going to do what he does, and you're going to be like, well, you won't be upset, but it's not exactly. You're not getting a bunch of ROI against your league mates in that draft with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be at that point. It was nice before because he was a value. He was going late. He was that 1,000-yard receiver. Now you're having to pay for it in the 5th round. I mean, you're going to be talking about like Scary Terry in that round. I'd rather have him. Like like you said, I don't know if the upside there is worth it in the 5th round for me.
All right. The Raiders agreed with Derek Carr to a 3-year contract extension worth $121 million.
Paid.
So he got his money there. The agreement ties Carr to Las Vegas through the 2025 season. He is already the longest tenured QB in the AFC as it stands right now. This is per Ian Rappaport. So Carr now locked up with the Raiders, which makes sense given the Devontae Adams signing and his extension. In his career, we look at Derek Carr. He's been a QB1 only one time in fantasy, which was in 2016. He finishes the QB12. With the addition of Devontae Adams and the new contract extension, what do we see as Derek Carr's true ceiling here? Austin, I'll let you start here.
I think Derek Carr finishes this year as the best fantasy finish he's ever had. What's his ceiling? I don't know if he can break through the top 5, but I think he can flirt with it. And my position behind that is this will be the best set of weapons he's ever had, and it won't even be close. Darren Waller is still an elite tight end from a fantasy perspective, from an NFL perspective. They have a lot of familiarity and will be able to maintain that continuity. That's nice. And now Devontae Adams, who is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, gets to join his Fresno college football teammate. The shower narrative is building. They've already bought a house next to each other. They're legit homies. He's got, and then, Brian Edwards and Hunter Renfrow and these other ancillary pieces that calling them that might actually be a bit disrespectful. They might even be bigger playmakers than I'm giving them credit for right now. So now all of a sudden you got a pretty nice situation weapons wise over there in Las Vegas, not to mention Josh Jacobs and some defensive players that they've got. This team made the playoffs last year and they were playing in the AFC West, right? Derek Carr showed me last year an ability to handle pressure and to handle complex situations. They lost their head coach. They lost Henry Ruggs, their number 1 wide receiver. This team made the playoffs. So when I look at them of what they're capable of, I think they've got the best situation they've been in a while. I don't think John Gruden did that organization many favors during his tenure. He's now old news. They've got the best wide receivers they've got. Derek Carr is 31 years old. He's a quarterback. Like, he might not even be in his prime yet for the way he plays the game. I think we've got a good Derek Carr season coming up ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just about trying to measure how good it's going to be, right? How good can he be? And maybe it's not, maybe it won't have to be that expensive, in drafts to get him. Maybe you can pair him, especially in these, 2 quarterback leagues, with another guy that you could kind of go with. But do want to say what's up to Freak Stomper in the chat. He says, what's up? Also, Mr. Miyagi says, playoffs. You talking about playoffs? Love it. Love to see you guys in here. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are dropping that like on your way in. All right, Johnny, the Eagles signed wide receiver and Olympic hurdler Devin Allen. Allen placed top 5 in each of the last 2 Olympics in the 110-meter hurdles. He played football at Oregon in 2016, but he hasn't played since. I believe he hasn't played since. Philly now bringing him in. Are we keeping an eye on Devin Allen for any kind of fantasy football relevance at all, or you just think this is a fun story?
I think it's a fun story at the end of the day. I don't know how much stock that I would put in this. And I think Philadelphia drafts more wide receivers in this draft. So, yeah.
They're going to keep it going, aren't they?
Keep it going.
Maybe.
Man.
I mean, they always just kind of.
Like if JJ Arcega-Whiteside wasn't the answer,
they screw
you
the
Baker.
Yeah, do you
they're
just
not going to draft. They're just going to pick up old Olympians, dude. Like, that's their style. They're like, screw the draft, dude.
Dude, you try to mix it up and be like, okay, I'm definitely not taking any receivers in the 1st or 2nd. I'm going to try the 3rd and the 4th. We'll see if we have better luck. Or do you think they're like, yo, we're bound. This got to hit. We're due.
This has to be considered mixing it up, right? They literally went outside the draft and said, you know what? We're going to turn over every rock here and try and find a wide receiver. We're going to go get this guy who.
What's the big? I just don't understand. It's like, Gibson or not Gibson? There's only been like one Olympic. He played. Who is it? Play for the 49ers.
These cute moves, they don't oftentimes end up working out. They're exciting. They end up maybe being fine players, but whether it's like a soccer player is now the kicker, or it's an Olympic hurdler is now the wide receiver, or a sumo wrestler is now the left guard. Like, It's fun, but it doesn't usually pan out. There's just so many more elements required for a football player to be effective at playing football. We talk about game speed a lot. We talk about 40 times and how they don't they don't line up all that often. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see over here. But hey, a cool story is a cool story. Speaking of the wide receivers, Jer Bangers coming in on our channels over on Twitch. What's good? What wide receivers do you guys project the Packers drafting? Also, what's your take on the Watkins ad? We did touch on this a little bit at the beginning of the show, and we're going to be jumping into all of the wide receivers coming up here, right?
Yeah, well, at least the ones that are part of that big 5 for the rookies. But we'll say really quickly that I've seen Chris Olave drafted to the Packers in a couple. I've seen Treylon Burks. I've seen Jameson Williams and a couple other mocks. I imagine we're going to go with a safer bet. So like an Olave, a Drake London, somebody like that. But I would love if they took the risk on Jameson Williams. That's where my heart's at. We'll get in more of that. And if you're interested on the Watkins, Austin broke that down just a little bit ago. Don't forget to rewind the tape here and check that out. Our last bit of news here: none of the 22 pending civil cases against Deshaun Watson will go to trial during the 2022 season. This is per Pro Football Talk. And so, Austin, this is a weird one, right? We're tiptoeing around, obviously some social issues here. I wouldn't say tiptoeing, we're walking through them, but I just want to know if this is going to give you more confidence in drafting Watson this season in redraft leagues, knowing that maybe those aren't going to happen during the regular season now.
Right. So it doesn't increase my concern levels. That's for sure. I'm still sitting with what we have said earlier, and that it's likely he's going to be looking at probably a 6-game suspension, the same kind of suspension we saw Kareem Hunt pick up, Ezekiel Elliott, right?
Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah. So we know that it doesn't need to be a criminal case, but when it's flirted with a criminal case, the way that this one has, and potential civil lawsuits to follow, is what the NFL has done. And I don't know why they wouldn't continue this path. They'll probably face more backlash if they don't. So I think that that's probably what they're going to do, even just straight up from a PR perspective. But that means 6 games. And then you probably get Deshaun Watson. The last time we saw him play, he threw over 40 touchdown passes for the Houston Texans, who weren't any better then as they are now. Still made it pop. I mean, real playmaker.
I mean, they were a little bit better then, right? Like they still had some good wide receivers.
Were they? They Hopkins on there and Fuller here and there.
Yeah, they actually had some good weapons over there.
But active.
I mean, when Fuller was healthy, for sure, they had some big moments. But yeah, Johnny, are you kind of in lockstep there with Watson?
Yeah, well, I mean, what would be interesting to me is they're saying they're being postponed till after the season. Is that correct?
Just saying that they wouldn't happen during the regular season.
I don't know if it's being postponed.
Okay,
it's just legal
the way the process works.
Oh, okay, so I ultimately think that could mean he could play all year. Because the NFL isn't going to make a verdict if something hasn't been,
Well, they also floated around the exempt list, which would mean like he doesn't play either, right? Like he's not suspended, but he's on the exempt list while they figure it out. So that's something that could happen as well. And then at whatever time he's out, I think would count towards a suspension. Later, if that's what they decided. I think that's how that works. I'd have to double check that, but we can check that. Speaking of, Mr. Miyagi says he can't wait for the draft. He's like, you guys are doing a live show for the draft day one, right?
Oh, yeah, baby.
That. Make sure it's basically around the same time we're going live right now. So we'll be rocking with you, and we'll be going pick by pick for the first round, reacting live with you.
Subscribe if you aren't.
Yeah,
so that way you can follow along.
Absolutely. All right. Last bit is a little bit of fun here. We found some facts on Reddit that are real, but they sound fake. These are some pretty fun ones here. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to list these out, hopefully pretty legibly. I'm going to read them out to you guys, and you guys are going to tell me which one you think sounds the most fake to you, or the one that you just like the most you want to talk a little bit about. All right. So the Houston Oilers / Tennessee Titans haven't been in the AFC East since the end of the 1969 season. They have as many AFC East titles as the New York Jets. 4. Austin, you bring this one up a lot with the NFC North and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Detroit Lions. So something very similar there. Yes. Matt Ryan won 120 games for the Atlanta Falcons. The QB that is second in the franchise in wins, Steve Bartkowski, started 121 games. He has a 55-66 record. So he's second in wins.
Matt Ryan just dominates for the Falcons.
Yeah. So he's just.
Oh, I was like, I thought this was going to be.
See, Big Travis can't even believe.
Yeah. All right, we'll just skip that one. Sorry. In Joe Flacco's first 5 playoff games, he completed 47.5% of his passes and threw for 1 touchdown versus 6 interceptions. The Ravens went 3-2 in those games. And then he got a massive payday too, and was considered elite. Remember that.
Wow. Sounds like Lamar.
So, all right. In Super Bowl 51, the Patriots ran 49 offensive plays after being down 28-3. Close your ears, Falcons fans. The Falcons offense ran 46 offensive plays the entire game. So in the Patriots comeback, they ran 8 more plays than the Falcons ran the entire game. And that would make sense, right? They're going to get the ball back a ton to try and come back. So, just adding salt to that Falcons comeback, or the Patriots comeback over the Falcons. Mark Sanchez has a career postseason passer rating of 94.3. This is higher than Brady, who has 90, Aikman, who has 88, both Mannings, 87, Roethlisberger, 86, Favre, 86, and Steve Young, 85.
Bro, it's like I've been saying, man.
Guys, is the king, dude.
Let Sanchez cook.
Hey, you won't.
You've been saying it, dude. Wow.
Oh, man.
QBs to start a game and post a passer rating of 0 are 66 or 6 and 65 and 1 all time.
Oh, say that again.
QBs to start a game and post a passer rating of 0 are 6, 65 and 1 all time. I want to know who the 6 QBs are that won, dude. Tell me that.
That's the better stat.
Mac Jones, one of them.
They're on like the 85 Bears.
Oh, I bet you.
Coming from
maybe he would be. He would be because he didn't do a single pass.
Well, he did a couple.
He had 2 completions, right? Or was it 3 or 2? Yeah.
which still might not be enough to break 0. I'm not
Right.
sure exactly how that formula breaks.
Julian Edelman brought Jerry Rice's daughter to prom. This is the fact that we have here. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
the
crazy.
Nightmare on Edelman Street. That's why. That's why they didn't get married.
Johnny wanted Julian Edelman to take him to prom. That's why he drafted him in our underdog draft a couple
Yeah, I
weeks.
wish he would have came back.
The Jets
Hey
have
man,
never.
Julian Edelman's done those kinds of things, and I would love to go on a date with Julian Edelman. He seems like a
Heck
really
yeah, dude.
fun dude.
He does.
Let's go.
He seems like he would plan out like a real nice evening.
He'd probably, and he seems like
Very
he's a
thoughtful.
gentleman. He'd probably open the door for you.
But he's
too.
also fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that guy.
Oh.
Like, he might be taking you to the opera, but he's gonna like sneak in a flask.
Oh,
You know,
Julian
just-
Edelman
oh,
fucks
dude.
hard.
Yeah.
There's absolutely for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Jerry Rice. You had to hear that about your daughter. The Jets have never beaten the Eagles. That is a fact that we have
Whoa.
here. Sounds fake, but it's never happened. Tom Brady has only completed a single touchdown pass in the first quarter of a Super Bowl, despite playing in 10 of them. It wasn't with the Patriots. So Brady waited until he was with the
Wow.
Bucs to get a touchdown in the first quarter of a Super Bowl. Which of
Wow.
these stats sounded the most fake to you or just got you the most excited here? Austin?
The Jets, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I got a whole new level of empathy for Jets fans. Like, dang. We talk about bad teams all the time, like the Chicago Cubs. You know, we throw in just different squads get thrown under the bus, the Sacramento Kings, whatever it might be. The Jets, though, they
Detroit
might take
Lions.
the cake. Yeah, Detroit Lions. Like, how are we not talking about the Jets anytime we talk about the Detroit Lions?
We're going
And
to
the Oilers have an NFC championship before they do, and their last one was in 1969, and they've never beat the Eagles?
Yeah, dude, you're just pouring
What?
it on the Jets today. Johnny, are you with Austin on the Jets hate there, or I shouldn't say hate, just sympathy.
Not hating, baby. It's just
Yeah.
what it is. Damn.
I mean, the franchise.
That's also
postseason-
Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that one is pretty interesting. But no, I'm going to go with the Tom Brady, the GOAT one. How is that? That's wild to be in the Super Bowl 10 times and only throw one single touchdown pass in the first quarter. Also, if Tom Brady makes it to the Super Bowl, we know what bet we're making, boys. No first down touchdown by Tom Brady.
I just did it with the Bucks.
Yeah, I might
know.
be betting the over on that one. I don't know.
Imagine that. He never does it with the Patriots, but did it every time with the Bucks.
Mr. Miyagi pointing out they always start slow in Super Bowls. Yeah, that is true. They have the 2 weeks off. They tend to does get a little rusty.
True. Facts.
So I could see that, but
That's another fun fact.
well, that does it with some of our fun facts. We're going to rock into the 2022 rookie wide receivers. This is a pre-NFL draft, of course, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the prospects themselves, maybe talk about where they could land, but really about what we liked out of each and every guy here. We did what we did last week with the running backs. We looked at dynastyfootball.com. We looked at PFF. We looked at Player Profiler, and we came up with the Big Five. And there is no particular order here, but we went 5 through 1 based on how the industry kind of goes 1 through 5, although there has been a lot of up and down on that. Austin and Johnny, we were talking about Treylon Burks for a long time as the guy as the number one. And so we went to IG and asked us, Whisper Nation, is Treylon Burks the first wide receiver off the NFL draft board? 43% of you said yes. 57% said no. So again, that kind of makes sense based on the fact that we've seen different rankings all over the place. That made us go to Twitter, right? We said, hey, with so many different takes on the Big Five rookie wide receivers, who belongs as the number one wide receiver in fantasy football? Now, obviously that's different than real football, but still something we want to kind of get here. And we saw all over the place with these different guys that are here. Treylon Burks, 33%. Other was 33%. So still tied as the number one, but with, other guys other than Jamison Williams, Garrett Wilson, some of the guys we're going to talk about today. So really what I found is, and you guys can kind of help speak to this as we go through them, but I don't know if there's one surefire guy for the industry or from what we've seen on the tape that's really like a lock. Did Austin first, then Johnny, did you guys come away feeling this is the number one guy? I have one guy that's a surefire number one.
I have my preferences, but I don't see a for sure number one. Honestly, with Treylon Burks, I'm getting a lot of DK Metcalf vibes in a couple of different ways. If we go back a few years to where the chatter around the NFL was about DK Metcalf, you had a lot of people saying, this is my number one. And then concerns about his route tree started to emerge. And maybe we're saying he's just buff and athletic and fast, but not really the best NFL wide receiver, which had him fall to almost the third round. Lots of wide receivers taken ahead of him, including our own in Arizona, Andy Isabella. I know we love that one. So DK Metcalf, though, was always somebody that you were excited to see what he was about, even if you said and admitted he had a limited route tree. You're like, this dude is big. This dude is fast. This dude is going to make plays. I just don't know how consistent he's going to be. And Treylon Burks kind of hits me in that same light, where even if you have some concerns, maybe injury recovery, maybe whatever, like this would be my number one fantasy wide receiver right now, no matter kind of where he ends up, unless he's like, buried under the depth chart or has an awful quarterback or something like that.
Tampa or something crazy like that.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? So like if he is he is my number one fantasy wide receiver, but I'm kind of with Whisper Nation. Is he the clear-cut number one drafted? I just can't say that he is. He would be for me, I believe so, but I'm not going to say consensus-wise.
Johnny, you kind of feel the same way, or how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I like Fitz. I think Fitz much more important than, like, of course, the tangibles and what, they can do is always important, but more so, can you take those strengths or what you're good at, and does it fit with the team that you get drafted? That's what's more important to me. That's how I get a better and more clear picture with what the potential ceiling could be for any of these guys. But if you're just straight up asking me off of, watching the tape and things like that, and which one I like the most and would prefer, it would be Jameson Williams. I think that guy, I understand he's coming off an injury, but ACLs and MCLs these days are, it's like a sprained ankle, much bigger timetable, of course, that you're out, but the technology today that you heal pretty well, if not even better. Some people say they run better when after they recover. So yes, I like him the most.
Love it. And I love the differing opinions, because it's really going to get fun once these fits happen. If we look at Freak Stomper, he says he agrees with Austin. I think he should be, talking about Treylon Burks. He's projected to be taken late round one, so he should be going to a good team. That's the concept. A lot of these guys probably going to land in some good spots. So fit is going to be everything, as unless Johnny Philly drafts you. Right. Unless Philly drafts him to sit behind the hurdler. So,
exactly.
But anyways, let's jump into it. We're going to start with number 5, and that is Chris Olave. And we're going to bring up the PFF draft guide as we did last week. We're going to talk about Chris Olave, who is out of Ohio State here as our number 5, 6 foot, 185 pounds. Player profiler comped him, guys, to Stephon Diggs. Some high praise there. But Diggs went, I believe, in like the 5th round. Was that right, Austin? I think. Yeah, he was a 5th round pick. So they've got him as their number 4. PFF does. They've got him coming off in the 1st round, and they say PFF says shades of Calvin Ridley. Watching him, I mean, he was always open, but he kind of lacked that big top end, big play kind of threat. I wanted to ask you guys, what system maximizes Olave's talents the most and gets him to that Stephon Diggs type ceiling that we, PFF kind of sees in his ability to route run and things of that nature? So, Johnny, what do you think would be the best fit for Olave to kind of get him to his ceiling?
Honestly, I think it would be the Colts. Right? Like, I mean, what better way than to go with the quarterback that, was throwing to Calvin Ridley? But just when you're talking about a very good, I mean, we talked about the complementary, it was hard to see what the difference was between Olave and Wilson. I just know he's super smooth. And again, he's an Ohio State wide receiver. They have really good history in the NFL. So you like that fact. So I do think he is a good wide receiver. I think he's, smooth, but that would probably be my best answer or hope is that he goes to the Indianapolis Colts. They could use him.
Austin, what were some of the notes and a fit you would like for Olave here?
Some of the notes I had watching Chris Olave film was finds the ball, good contested catch, gadgety. He looks pretty decent at a lot of things. I didn't see him stand out too profoundly in any one area, but I thought he tracked the ball really well, made good, smart plays. I think a team that's kind of middle of the road. I like Johnny's Indianapolis pick. I honestly kind of like Atlanta. Maybe it's because Freak Stompers coming in here saying not whoever Atlanta drafts either.
Well, they're going to need somebody.
Yeah,
they need some wide receiver help, and I think Chris Olave could be someone coming in and helping your team in multiple ways from day one.
Yeah.
If we think he's going to be, he's got the upside of a Calvin Ridley or of a Stephon Diggs. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that goes first because the fit is so good for him in a place like the Jets or the Falcons. And we may not love it so much, in our sake, and maybe the Falcons would be okay, as far as target volume, he's going to get a ton of it. But I think he's a guy that could maybe translate that well. Extremely polished route runner is what PFF says here, Johnny. And I just wanted to flash up, we talk about Jerry Jeudy when we talk about route running. Well, from Matt Harmon's reception perception, we kind of have a route tree comparison here. Olave hitting that yellow to green on everything. Our guy Jerry Jeudy had even some red spots. So Olave, again, like just to reiterate that point that he's an extremely
better than Jerry Jeudy. Saw it there.
Yeah, there you go. You heard it there first. We look at some of his rankings among the nation. Nothing crazy that he wasn't top 10 or top 20 in anything as far as production. But again, PFF thinks that he's a great route runner, and he's somebody that's definitely going to be a number 2 in the league. Could be even a little bit better than that as well. So we will move on to our next wide receiver, which is Johnny mentioned him as his favorite. I loved what I saw out of Jameson Williams tape, but this is Jameson Williams who went to Alabama. The position rank for PFF, they have him as number 3. He's 6'1", 179 pounds, and of course, the big knock on Jameson this year, the big con here is that he tore his ACL in that national championship game. So that's the only big con that I've seen that's really, I mean, obviously he's a smaller guy.
So we were like, the only big con that he's dead, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's going to have a long road back. That's a huge con. Especially what's, I talked about this off air, but I think the Packers are in a position where they're looking at wide receiver, right? Do they take a guy like Jameson Williams if he's going to have the long road comeback because they have the win now mentality with Aaron Rodgers? Obviously, the late ACL, that's the concern. But from a dynasty perspective, why is he or isn't he the wide receiver 1, Austin, for you? What would be, like when you're looking at it, we love the tape. So, where is he at for dynasty at the 101 for you?
I love him. I love what Jameson Williams is about. And I'll just say that I think GMs making decisions based on fit are shortening their own career. You got to go with the best player available almost all the time. Don't try to fill your team in with rookies. There's so many question marks, and you're now all of a sudden going to be going and trying to fill a hole with a question mark when you could be aiming for a ceiling raising type of player. The draft to me is exclusively to go and get playmakers. And if you get playmakers that are different than the system than you have, you change the system that you have. That's what the best coaches do, is you take the talent that you have on your team and you build a system that highlights their strengths and minimizes their weaknesses. So I'm getting the guy who has the most strengths available. And I think Jameson Williams has got a lot of them. He looks incredibly comfortable. He plays outside of his body. It's like, I was just watching the Tony Hawk documentary, and it's so difficult to keep trying something over and over and over again when you're getting thrashed time and time again, and not to have that little bit of fear of how much your body is about to take a beating. And you just keep practicing as if that's not a factor. That's how he moved to me. And he thinks multiple steps ahead. You can see him moving so methodically. He's physically gifted. He's talented, but he's also mentally ahead of the curve. I think Jameson Williams is a super stud. I would be stoked to have him as a part of the Packers. Because we can go pick up Jarvis Landry. If we want to go fill up a hole, just go grab somebody who's actually got experience and then give us
Watkins.
There we go. There we go. Give ourselves, but then give us an actual playmaker the year after that, because time moves forward. It's all it does.
Yeah. So Freak Stomper coming in here. I wish you wouldn't have said this second comment, but couldn't beat out Wilson or Olave when they played together. Johnny, this is a big narrative that's happening because he did transfer from Ohio State to Alabama. So why wasn't he able to make it there? Obviously, they had a loaded wide receiver room, maybe established already. Freak Stomper saying picking up big Henry Rugg vibes. His best ability is his speed. I don't think that he is Henry Ruggs style. I believe that he's a lot more versatile than Henry Ruggs. Just what I've seen out of the tape. I think Henry Ruggs was overdrafted by the Raiders. I don't think he belonged there. And the Raiders weren't creative at all with Henry Ruggs. So kind of unfair to that comp that we're just going to always comp guys that are fast to other fast guys. Obviously, PFF doing it right here with a taller Deshaun Jackson for Jameson Williams. But Johnny, I wanted to ask you more about the Wilson and Olave take, the take about transferring and how much that weighs and factors in for you with Jameson Williams.
I love it. I think it's great. The fact that he went to Ohio State is the important part. Yeah, and then it would be different if he went from Ohio State to like ASU or Ohio State to one of these other like lesser competition. Alabama produces really good wide receivers as well. Like Calvin Ridley, really good wide receiver. Julio Jones, really good wide receiver. Amari Cooper, like the Waddle from last year. Like these guys are really talented. And so, and you also have to remember like Devonta Smith was in that wide receiver group as well. And so to me, I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, I think it speaks highly that you can go from one coveted wide receiver program to another one and still produce in both of them. So I really love him. I really do.
And I just want to throw in the point there that Freak Stomper brought up about not being able to beat out Wilson or Olave when they played together. Now, I don't know the details of why the depth chart was what it was, but like Cam Newton, before he won a championship with Auburn, he was playing for Blinn in Florida. Well, like he had other quarterbacks.
Joe Burrow.
Also, Dwayne Haskins, beat out Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow transferred to LSU.
Right, which is another reason to be like one-hit wonders. Yes, you don't want to bet on the exception all the time, right? Like that's not, we want the rule more than the exception. But in a case of special talent, are we going to hinder special talent? Are we going to hinder our outlook on special talent just because they transferred? And we don't know the whole story. It may not just be talent. It may be a coaching staff. Coaches are a situation that players, disagree with all the time.
I would have I would have transferred too if that was.
I don't believe it was Urban Meyer, but that would be hilarious. We'll move on to the number 3 wide receiver, who is Garrett Wilson. Ohio State, the other Ohio State wide receiver here. PFF saying shades of Deontay Johnson at 6 foot 183. We had a comp from Player Profiler of Jerry Jeudy. We talked about Olave and Jerry Jeudy. Looking at Wilson, he reminds me very much of his teammate Olave. They're very similar. They're compiled the same. They're going to be open all the time on this film that you watch of them. They turn into solid possession guys. But how do we get to their upside? I'll ask again, this time, Johnny, what you're thinking about Garrett Wilson's fit and just what you thought of him when you watched the tape.
I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's smooth. I think he's going to be a very solid and productive wide receiver. Will he necessarily be a top 5? Probably not. No matter, it'd be hard to see a landing spot where he could, maybe if he went to like Kansas City, then you could be like, yeah, maybe he has the upside there and the system. But I mean, this guy is smooth. I could definitely see him running more underneath routes, which is why it tends to be a little bit more difficult for those guys to be top 12 wide receivers. I do love the comp, and I definitely see Deontay Johnson in Garrett Wilson, but I definitely want to see who's throwing him the ball, because obviously that makes a major difference, major difference on who's throwing the ball. But he's one of the best all-around wide receivers to me in this draft class. He's a possession wide receiver, so think of guys like Debo or Jarvis, things like that, guys that are going to eat yardage. And his route running is way up there as well. So I really like Garrett Wilson. He was very close to me for like my other number 1.
You can only have one number 1, Johnny.
Yeah,
but
he was like my 1A.
Okay. So I liked what Johnny was saying here, Austin, about Wilson and Olave as guys that like fit is going to matter so much for them because of the way the style that they play their compilers. Yeah. These are guys that if they go to Kansas City, if they go to Green Bay, you're very excited about them for fantasy football purposes. If they go to New York, if they go to Atlanta, maybe not so much. What did you see when you looked at Garrett Wilson here and kind of what you think will project in the NFL here?
I saw separation. I saw yards after catch potential. I saw elusiveness. I saw a guy who's pretty good at everything. I saw a guy who had decent work in the open field. I think he's gonna fill in a lot of holes for you. I don't know how much of a ceiling he raises for you, but I think he covers a lot of your holes.
Let me ask you this. Covered. Hey, are we gonna get some Wilson on Wilson action?
Oh, there we go. You want him to go to Denver?
No.
Oh.
Well, I guess. I mean, I didn't think about that. No,
I thought you were talking about Zach Wilson. My bad. Wilson on Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Nearly every mock I've looked at, the Jets are taking a wide receiver. They have 3 picks, so I think it's 2 or 3 picks in the first round. So they're going to take a wide receiver likely in one of them. Is Wilson the guy we want the Jets to get? Is it? I don't know if Wilson.
I mean, I wouldn't say would I want him to get the land there, but Wilson on Wilson action, usually you have to pay double for that. So
I don't know. That's a discount on Wilson on Wilson, I believe. That's half off, probably. All right. Well, we'll move on to the number 2 wide receiver, who is Drake London out of the University of Southern California. His page number in the profiler book is 69.
Nice.
Drake London is 6'4", massive, 219. Just a really tall, big-bodied wide receiver. Used to play basketball. That's obviously the huge narrative that's coming out with him. But the other narrative, gents, I mean, we look at his last year. 2021 was great. Over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Worked in the slot very, very minimally here. He was a guy that went up and got the contested catch, but then it seemed to be like that's all he could do. And so the narrative now is he cannot separate. He's kind of a Devontae Parker. He's a guy you're going to have to worry about because corners are going to be all over him. Do we think that's going to be a problem at the next level, Austin? Is that what you saw from the tape here?
I mean, I did see what you're speaking of. I didn't see any separation. I saw a guy who was catching the ball quick and getting down. Get in, get out is what I saw. He does his job. No open field action. Not seeing a lot of separation, but a lot of catches. I'm not sure this does impact him down the road because the catches he was making, like if you zoom in on what's happening there, he's making really impressive catches. And you can make comments about you can make a comment about the cornerbacks, as Johnny did when we were breaking down film and saying that the competition just wasn't that good. And I'm like, the defender's fingers are really close to the ball and he's still pulling it down. And then he goes to the ground. So no, I don't think that is going to have a big impact. I think that he needs a good quarterback to throw him the ball. I think he needs somebody who can hit a tight window. But if he has that, I think that Drake London will do his job. He'll catch the ball. He'll immediately go out of bounds. He'll fall down. So like landing in New York with Zach Wilson would be horrible as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that would do any good. But Drake London could be a decent fit for like a Buccaneers or a Green Bay or a team that can have a great quarterback that can hit tight windows. That's how I kind of see him. Yeah. I think he's going to be a good player for the team. I don't know how much of a fantasy football impact we're going to see from him over his career.
Johnny, they say PFF says shades of Brandon Marshall. You were maybe not as high as some others on Drake London, at least from the initial reaction of the tape. How are you feeling today about Drake London's prospects in real and fantasy football?
I think that the Brandon Marshall one, it was a little bit of a stretch for me. I think I saw Alshon Jeffrey, a guy who can't really separate, a little bit slower, but he has great hands. He can go up and grab it. My concern is the level of talent at the cornerback position might be a little bit more difficult than he expects. But again, I think landing spot, I hate to keep using that as a scapegoat, but like, again, if he goes to a quarterback that knows how to do things like that, like an Aaron Rodgers, if he goes to Aaron Rodgers, he could become the next kind of Devontae Adams because Aaron Rodgers could teach him where he wants the ball, and he'd be great at catching it. Or like a Michael Thomas kind of thing where he's just really good at catching the ball. They're not the quickest on the 40. And so you just have to know how to use that to your advantage. If he goes to a team, that's just trying to use him to kind of stretch the field or something, he might struggle a little bit. That's my concern.
Yeah, like I feel like if he had to go in and be the true number one to somebody that like needed like a middling game manager quarterback, then it's like, okay, that's going to be tough for him. And you're going to see a lot of games where you don't get those completions. But I'm with you. Like, obviously, we're going to keep saying Kansas City and Green Bay because those teams are very known to be wide receiver needy, and they are going to go wide receiver, whether it be trade or the draft. They're going to do it on draft night. And so that's why we're going to keep saying that, because 2 of these 5 wide receivers, maybe more, are going to go to the Green Bay Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs. So we got to figure out, kind of projecting that fantasy football wise.
I mean, think about how deflating it would be if he goes to the Texans, right?
Oh my God.
Like, that's what I'm saying is, like,
he looks like a tall Julian Edelman.
Julian Edelman is faster, I think. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't have the.
What's interesting is the fact that, like, his first 2 years he ran the majority out of the slot, and then it was almost like they were just like, yeah, he's not fast enough. Like, we can't take advantage of that enough. We have to move him to the outside, and then you saw the uptick in production.
He reminds me a little of Michael Pittman, who also came from USC a little bit. So he's like the bigger body wide receiver that I think if he got the right quarterback could win a little bit. We'll see how it happens. USC is kind of hit and miss with their wide receivers. We'll see what happens with our Drake London, but we will move on to Drake London tape. Freak Stomper talking here. He says, Drake London tape that I saw shows he fights for every yard. He invites contact and kind of fights like a mini Kittle.
If you mean by every yard, you're literally talking about just 1 yard every time, because it's not like he catches it and runs after. He just like catches it, comes down with it, and then maybe he tries to fight forward. But
yeah, I mean, he didn't have a ton of deep yards, did have a good amount of deep catches, 15. That was 10th in the nation among wide receivers. So not bad there. And then, of course, first in contested catches. So that's obviously his game, and we know that. We're just hoping that that's not all he can do if he lands with somebody other than an elite quarterback. All right, our number one, based on what we could look at it from the consensus, we talked about him at the top, Treylon Burks here. We will go to his page in PFF. But Treylon Burks, there's a reason why Austin was saying giving him DK Metcalf vibes, 6'2", 225. The wide receiver is out of Arkansas, and last year he had a monster year with Arkansas with the Razorbacks here. He said over 1,000 yards, 16.9 yards per catch, guys. I mean, just a monster there. 85 grade for PFF. They say shades of Dante Moncrief. Player profiler comps him to Jordy Nelson. I mean, Moncrief was a pretty good prospect, or pretty decent prospect, and had a flash of good games with Andrew Luck. But
and one with Ben Roethlisberger.
I have a soft spot for Moncrief because
yeah, of course you do.
In fantasy for a little bit there, but I liked him. He played.
I played him a time or two.
Anyways, 6'2", 225. We're talking about Treylon Burks here.
Like Travis knows.
We're talking about Treylon Burks here, and boys, the tape was really fun to watch with Treylon Burks. Obviously, a massive weapon for Arkansas here. 4th in yards. What is that? Yards per attempt, catch, reception. What is that? I don't know what that stat is, so I won't even read it. But 9th in screen yards. I mean, just obviously what we talked about, his size and speed is where PFF says he's going to win. We love the tape. We love the measurables, but are we too infatuated with guys? Like I talked about exception versus rule before. Are we too infatuated with guys like DK and AJ Brown? Do we have recency bias, or are you buying what you saw on tape out of Treylon Burks, Austin?
I liked what I saw out of Treylon Burks. I saw a thoughtful wide receiver who had great focus and a barrel chest. Man, that dude just looked like he was packing heat.
Mr. Big
up
chest
at the front. Yeah. Not quick, but fast. Really good game speed. He looked like a playmaker. He looked like someone you could rely on. He looked like someone who could make plays at multiple points along the field. He looks to me like a franchise wide receiver. That's who I saw when I looked at Treylon Burks, and I'd like to have that on any team I'm rooting for.
Yeah, PFF saying that he's a traits projection. Basically, they think that, I think it's very similar to DK. The reasons we didn't like DK coming out was limited route tree, things like that. But are you just going to go ahead and buy into the size and the speed here and say, if I put him with a great quarterback, it's not going to matter, Johnny?
Well, I think that's why it's really funny to me that you have Seattle coming out. How How? Oh, don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Oh, I'll trade DK. We'll trade DK for 2 firsts. Yeah, because you could get his replacement right here and would work in his system. It's already worked once, so it's like, okay. Oh, and then guess what? I don't have to pay DK in a year and a half, a major contract, a major contract. No, like, yeah, no wonder it's
Johnny, I need to get you a direct line to Pete Carroll right now so you can convince him to trade away DK to my Packers because you have the replacement in Treylon Burks right here.
Yes.
If Seattle wants to take Drew Lock and have him throw it to Treylon Burks, be my guest. We'll take DK.
Well, it's going to be Baker, baby. Baker's going to be throwing to Treylon Burks. Okay.
I should have known this is always it's always a Baker tweet.
Hey, Baker's going to be throwing in there. And then guess what? It's going to be and then OBJ is going to just be like, oh, I was too short. Apparently, I needed to be 6'4" in order to catch passes from Baker. That's what the thing is going to be. But in all seriousness, like that to me screams why they would be going after him, because he does project to be that way. It is funny because he didn't, mess up in his 3-cone drill, so he's not getting the heat that DK got. And of course, like, DK was dealing with some injury concerns, which Burks isn't. But I really like Burks. To me, Burks is a guy where I don't really care where he goes. I think he will be good.
Yeah, if I'm a team that doesn't have a super accurate quarterback, I am really trying to get myself a Treylon Burks.
And maybe that's what I should have said maybe in the beginning of the show when you asked me like my favorite wide receiver. Treylon Burks to me is the only guy out of all these wide receivers where I don't really care where he goes, because I could definitely see him being fantasy relevant with whatever quarterback because of his skill set. Again, you'd like it.
You heard it here. Johnny wants Treylon Burks to go to Zach Wilson and the Jets.
No, I really wanted him to go to the Cardinals, where I saw that was like Todd McShay's latest mock draft had Treylon Burks going to the Cardinals. And I was like, hell yeah, that is a perfect, because it goes opposite of Hopkins. He can run the goes. He has good hands. I was like, that would be perfect. Then you have more underneath that would sexy as hell. And then I wake up to, we signed AJ Green. So that's what
Freak Stomper says, saw a mock that had Burks to the Cardinals. I'd sign up for that.
Yeah.
He also said that he loves Burks. He's going to be great. The only knock I have on Burks is that he gives up on plays when he doesn't get the ball. And he's
I'm used to it. I'm AJ Green, so it's okay.
He would be my first wide receiver off the board. That is a concern. The other concern I have here is what PFF points out. He's got the body type of an X receiver, but never played there. 77% of his career snaps came in the slot. So again, Arkansas, we have to wonder why Arkansas didn't use him as an X. Why were they only using him as a slot? Maybe that's an advantage thing, as Johnny talked about earlier. But that is something that, pundits are looking at. We're looking at this as something to take a look at. Austin, are you concerned at all about the slot snap percentage, or?
I think they're going to find a way to make this talent work.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's got a lot of physical gifts. And I think that game plans in the NFL change and evolve often. And I think you find a way to make the use of Treylon Burks' physicalities and his skill sets.
Like the Dallas Cowboys, like Jerry
they want
Jones.
him. You know they want him.
They want him.
We talked about it.
It was interesting. I did see a very interesting relation or process of words, I should say, that they equated when you go out in the first round of a draft and you grab one of these skill possessions, because oftentimes you're like, oh, are they really going to be starting over a starter? And the answer was, what it was correlated to was, imagine when you are given a gift. Like if I give you a gift, are you necessarily going to put it up, or are you going to, make sure it's stored away in a perfect place? No, you're like, it's a gift for me, right? But if you go out and buy something and purchase something, then you immediately come home and you're like, I'm gonna put it in a place. I know exactly where it's going to go. If something is in that place, you move that and you put it there. And that's very similar, apparently, to how NFL franchises view this first round with these players.
Freak Stomper coming in here. Burks is a guy you want to you just find a way to get him the ball. Yak monster. We talked a little bit about that too. A hyped up version of like a Debo Samuel or some of these other guys that get out in space and they're just going to be your weapon to get yards after catch. I mean, kind of what AJ Brown is, right? Like AJ Brown has built his career on that. He's not necessarily the DK Metcalf all the time. He's the guy that's going to get you the yards after catch. And I think Treylon Burks actually comps a little bit more to AJ Brown than he does DK in that sense that you can use him in the slot. We talked about 77%. So you could use him as a weapon right away there and then use him all over the place from there. So that's something exciting to look at with our guy Burks. All right.
Where do you want him to go, Travis?
Treylon Burks, to me, I don't agree with you that he could go anywhere and be effective. I think he's going to need to go to a good quarterback. I think he's going to need to go to a good coaching staff more than anything. I shouldn't just say quarterback. He's going to need to go to somebody that's, forward thinking and getting him the ball and involved. I think Atlanta would be fun. I think if you paired him with a Pitts and you moved him all around the field, he'd get the target volume that you want. He'd get a guy in Arthur Smith who, look at how he used Cordarrelle Patterson. I know he's creative. Like I know he can get him moved around. So I actually think Atlanta's not a bad fit.
What about Pittsburgh?
Well, I still love Claypool, so it's hard for me to be. But
dude, you already broke his heart with Zach Moss.
I'll tell you right now, if Pittsburgh takes one of these big five, bottom line here is if Pittsburgh takes one of these top 5 wide receivers, go get that wide receiver in fantasy and dynasty because Pittsburgh drafts the hell out of wide receivers. And if they decided to take one of these guys when they have other needs, when they have a wide receiver room that's good, that means they really liked that guy. And I kind of trust that they're.
Oh my gosh! If they go out and get Garrett Wilson, oh my gosh, my heart is gonna break. He is like literally Deontay Johnson, and it's like, that only means
I don't think they take somebody that.
I don't think so.
That's kind of why I threw it out to Pittsburgh, though. I thought Treylon Burks could be a really nice
slot.
Pairing.
He'd be like a juiced up Juju.
Juju.
Yeah, he's just like a roided out Juju. He didn't
move Chase Claypool to the third role. You know what I mean? Make him the third option.
Yeah,
and don't ask him to do so much
off of him.
Right, and have Deontay and Treylon Burks kind of be your lead guys as you're starting to usher in a new quarterback.
Yeah, Freak Stomper said
in the red area.
Obviously, I would love Treylon Burks. I don't think Burks makes it to Green Bay.
We didn't think DK Metcalf was going to make it to the end of the second.
Wait a second. Travis didn't want Burks. Travis was telling us yesterday he didn't want Burks.
Well, I should say this. I don't think Burks is the number 1 wide receiver. I think Jameson Williams is the number 1 wide receiver.
I agree.
But I think that Burks, to me, I would take Burks over the 2 Ohio State wide receivers. And then I have other guys that can project, and we're going to talk about some of the later round guys guys that could be sleepers that I think could end up giving you kind of what Burks gives you. I'm not saying that, they're going to be him. They're not the same player, but I think that you can get guys later to get that kind of project that he's essentially going to have to be unless he gets right in and does AJ Brown things. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about some of these other guys. So basically the 3 names we have left, they're late risers. These are guys that are flying up draft boards for other people in their mock drafts. We're going to talk George Pickens out of Georgia, Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, and Sky Moore out of Western Michigan. So we'll quickly go through these guys, but just talk a little bit about them. We'll start with Pickens out of Georgia, 6'3", 200 pounds. PFF says Kenny Golladay is their comp here. So that, you think of Kenny Golladay on the Giants. I beg you not to think of Kenny Golladay as a prospect and on the Lions in his good years, because that's what I think of George Pickens here. I think he's really good. 6'3", 195. He also has ACL concern. He tore his ACL much longer ago than that's terrible. Longer ago than Jameson Williams. So he doesn't have as much of a timetable to come back. But I wanted to ask Johnny, how much higher you think Pickens would have been ranked this year if he didn't have that ACL tear? And for you,
he would have been a lot higher. I like him. I think he would have probably been ahead of guys like Chris Olave. Not to say that I don't think Olave's not necessarily a bad wide receiver. I just think I really liked what I saw when I watched his tape. And so you have to imagine that, having the injury did play or is playing a part in why he's falling. But I really liked what I saw from him.
Austin, what about you? When you saw Pickens films, what really stood out?
He was springy. I thought he looked crafty. I thought he's a playful wide receiver. I wrote down that I bet he wins a lot of rock, paper, scissors matches.
Oh yeah, the classic.
You and Nick Sirianni, dude, the
Yeah.
Eagles coach, dude.
I think that he does. And what I mean by that is somebody who's like kind of looks at the little things and tries to almost get in the head of the defender, get in the head of the people around him, and has fun with it. You know, is able to think ahead and know where he's at in relation to others on the field. And I think he uses his natural gifts, which are quickness and a springiness, maybe not an overall top speed, but he's got some shifty abilities to him. And I like what appears to be his mental game. I like George Pickens. I think he could end up being a sneaky wide receiver pick.
Mhm.
First of all, you say crafty and all this stuff, and PFF saying carves up kids at the catch point. I think that's just the same kind of stuff. He's just like very creative, very crafty. Plus, his last name is Pickens. Like, what a great wide receiver. He's Pickens the air right out of the
ball right out of the air.
Yeah, air right out of the ball. There we go.
That'd be impressive.
I liked him too. Wish his production was better. Obviously, that's what we're, the concern here with the injury. But I thought he had a lot to offer as far as tape. And I think he's going to be one of those late guys like people sleeping on because of the tape.
Yep.
And a lot of these guys have injury concerns. So we look at their career. So like not one of them is really a model of health. And so that's something that's working in Pickens' favor. He could end up in on a really good team and doing some big stuff here. So we'll move on to Jahan Dotson, or I don't know if it's Jahan or Jahan, but he went to Penn State. I need to listen to how his name is pronounced so I don't keep butchering it. Went to Penn State here, 5'11", 181. Player or PFF comping him to Kendall Wright. Player profiler comping him to Tyler Lockett. Biggest takeaway in film for you, Johnny, when you watched Dotson's film here?
Crafty. He's got good hands. I do have a little bit of concern with him, as far as the production when you talk about Penn State wide receivers. That is my just kind of where 5'11". He reminded me, I didn't want to say this because I don't think he'll have the same, or at least I would hope he wouldn't have the same outcome. But he reminds me a lot of Rieger. Like he can he makes some really skilled catches. But then other times I'm like, I could definitely just see him kind of being somewhat of a gadget play or not quite getting to the ceiling that we thought he could, like a Denzel Mims kind of thing. So did I see tape where I was very impressed? Absolutely. But then I also did see a couple of things that I maybe kind of scratch my head or wonder, hey, is this going to be able to be produced at the NFL level?
Our boy Ronald in the chat. What's up, Professor Ron? Yo,
the professor.
He also said Ray Gar.
Which is right. Yeah. Ray Gar.
Austin, when you watched Dotson's film, what stood out to you, my man?
Deep ball threat, makes tough catches. No examples of contested catches because he was always in the open field. I like the Tyler Lockett comparison. I like the Jalen Reagor comparison. That's a lot of what I saw of Dotson, and it's a bit of a gamble. We love these types of players, and if you do get a true ceiling raiser, you get yourself a Tyreek Hill, you get yourself an old Deshaun Jackson, like that's impactful. But more times than not, you end up getting yourself a Henry Ruggs. Previous to the accident, it's like a guy who is so fast. Even they could throw out a Christian Kirk. I could even throw out a Mecole Hardman. Jury's still out on Mecole. I really hope he comes through. I spent a second-round pick to pick him up last year before the season started, but that's what I kind of see from him. A guy that if you get a Tyler Lockett who's got a relationship with the Russell Wilson and they can really make it work, great. But Tyler Lockett, in my opinion, is a bit of an overachiever because of the relationship he has with his quarterback. And I think you're going to need something like that out of Dotson to be perennially consistent and impactful for both his NFL team and your fantasy team.
Yeah, I feel that. And I feel like we might be kind of on the same page with Sky Moore here as well, who's a guy that's rising up a lot of boards here. But kind of a smaller guy, obviously, 5'10", 195, went to Western Michigan. We've got PFF calling him shades of Julian Edelman here. We've got player profiler calling him Golden Tate. Am I correct? I watched the tape here, and I don't know. I guess maybe it's the smaller school, better, more equal competition than those Ohio State guys. But, Johnny, am I crazy to think Sky Moore might be better than both those Ohio State wide receivers?
Maybe, yeah. I think but I do like Sky Moore. I think that he is, to me, when I watch this, he runs like a running back. And what I mean by that is when he has the ball in his hands, He's, a bulldozer. He is very comfortable with the ball in his hand. So he's like a yak guy and yak weapon. There you go. And so I really like the potential, right? Especially as we're starting to see these offenses start to include wide receivers a little bit more in the run game. That's going to be for a team, depending on where he goes, that could be such a bread and butter for him. So he does have, it opens the door, at least in my eyes, to a much greater ceiling potential. Again, if he lands on one of those zone running scheme kind of innovative offenses, Kyle Shanahan type of coaching tree, where they would use him like that. But I don't know if he'll necessarily, or I would bet that he would be better than the Ohio State guys, just because I do like both of those receivers. But I'll tell you what, I could see why Moore is, rising up draft board.
Yeah, Ronald's saying he likes him more than Dotson, who we just talked about as one of the other late risers. But he says too many wide receivers with the last name Moore already. Though.
I know, right?
Says Ron. Austin, to Johnny's point, missed tackles forced. Sky Moore was number 1 in the nation, 26 missed tackles forced. What did you see of Sky Moore, and where would you kind of rank him? He's starting to get a lot of heat coming into the draft here.
I saw a reliable prospect. I saw a possession wide receiver. I saw someone who's comfortable all over the field, but not super gifted. This would be the kind of thing you'd see like a team that's trying to be realistic, a team that's trying to be pragmatic. Like they go out and they spend an early round pick on a guy like this because they think it's going to fill a hole. And I think that's a huge mistake. Like go get yourself just some free agent wide receiver who can fill that hole. But that's the way I see Sky Moore kind of being picked up. I liked Golden Tate comes to mind, a player that I saw Golden Tate drafted all the time in fantasy drafts, and it always just it didn't surprise me as being drafted. I know that he's getting drafted, but I look at taking a Golden Tate, I'm like, why? Like, you don't ever want to be starting Golden Tate in your lineup. He's going to get you, 60 yards, he's going to get you some catches, but his ceiling is low, his floor and it's kind of middle. I don't know. I think he's going to be good for a team if they put him on the right squad, but I don't think he's going to be a big difference maker for his NFL team or your fantasy.
I feel like Sky Moore's the guy that's he has the lowest floor of the guys we're kind of talking about, but he's definitely a guy that has equal ceiling, maybe even to the big 5, in my opinion, because should he get in the right situation, Johnny's talking about the creativity, obviously, in the offense, but also just like a really good quarterback that can continue to pepper him with stuff. I think his agility, is something that is a little bit more than a guy like Golden Tate. So I think his peak could be a little bit more, but that's obviously the player profiler comp that they have there.
You know who he really reminds me of, to be honest with you? Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead is who he reminds me of. Imagine if the Patriots get more, and you could definitely imagine them using him as that, in that James White role.
Oh, so we'll have a 4th wide receiver that we won't know if we should start or not? Yeah, I don't want that, dude. I don't want him to go to the Patriots at all.
Dude, I like this comparison that Ronald brought up. Golden Tate used to be a solid bottom wide receiver 2 there for a while, and just a quick blast from the past there in 2014, Golden Tate had his best year, 1,300 yards, 4 touchdowns, finished as the 11 wide receiver in PPR, 13 in standard. In the right kind of situation where they're leaning on him, it's like a perfect match. I could see something like that happening, but I think solid bottom wide receiver 2 is kind of what Sky Moore's ceiling is for me also.
Well, that is 8 names we gave you today of guys that are going, in the draft as guys that are projecting maybe 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounds, guys that are going to be fantasy relevant before you know it. So we wanted to get, some tape, watch some tape and get accustomed to these guys. And we're excited because in a couple weeks, we'll be seeing these guys drafted right on live TV and talking with you, Whisper Nation. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and you got your notifications turned on so you can be with us on draft night as we rock and roll through the NFL draft, at least the first round of it. All right. Well, before we take off today, Austin, give you a little bit of gone in 60 seconds here.
Gone in 60.
All right. So we talk a lot in the fantasy world about winning championships. I'm happy to say that I just got to win our fantasy basketball championship last week. And the joke in all of our circles with me is about how I always come in second. It's a ridiculous amount. Our league of record, I've came in second 3 times. Our dynasty league, twice in 4 years. Our basketball, couple of second place finishes, a bunch of them in our baseball fantasy championships. And the question was asked to me, what was the takeaway from winning this championship here? A couple of things. One, stay humble. I saw a Robert De Niro quote recently that was saying, when things are good, don't get too excited. When things are bad, don't get too excited. It keeps the flow going. And so know that there is a lot of luck that gets involved in this game, but you also have an ability to influence that. And that's my second takeaway. Stay diligent in the NFL, NBA, MLB, NASCAR, golf, whatever fantasy sport you're playing. Play it all the way through, because there are silly season heroes that pop up at the end of the year who make real differences. And that can be the difference between having a good season and finishing as the #1 overall player that year and taking the championship home. So stay diligent, stay with it, keep your eyes open for the types of players that are going to, Jalen Horde was my big winner there in the basketball season, small forward for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm sure you have no idea who he is because nobody really does, but he's averaging like 15 rebounds a game in the last week. And that happens all the time in a lot of sports. So stick with us, the Fantasy Whispers, or your favorite platform, really wherever it's at. Just keep your head in the game, keep playing all the way through, because there's going to be really impactful players that pop off at the end of the season. And most people are disengaged at that point, and you'll be able to pick them up easy.
The wise words of a champion. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome,
brother. Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for us in episode 265 of the Fantasy Whispers. For Austin Cyr, for Johnny Game Time Hicks, I'm Big Travy. We're the Fantasy Whispers. We're out. Peace.
Peace.
Right here.
Look at you go. You made it to the end of another one of our videos. Hey, if you still have some questions, I totally understand. Or you just want to join an awesome fantasy football community, head on over to our Discord chat. Link is in the description below. And if you're still not sold on us, check out one of these videos.